Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Dan.
Welcome to the We Built This Business podcast as we sit down with ambitious entrepreneurs to discuss their journey and hear about the highs and the lows of running your own company.
Each episode, we will find out what it takes to be an owner of a business as we learn about the challenges, the successes, the failures, and the future. Right, well, let's get into it. Okay, so Alex, thanks for joining us here today. Whereabouts are you dialing in from?
I'm in sunny Cyprus, Dan.
Wow, look at that view. Look at that view. Almost as nice as our view, Dan, isn't it, behind us?
I think yours is more consistent. I love how those waves just constantly roll on in.
Yeah, we've tried to mimic your background in a little bit of a way, but we need to work on that a little bit. So obviously today, Alex, we're here to talk about you essentially. So for those that already know you, so Zest Digital was a company that you've set up in 2010, and then recently last year you've exited that business. So what we're looking to do today is obviously talk a little bit about your journey during that time, find out how things have gone since you've exited the business with yourself, and obviously what your plans are for the future. But before we do anything, we thought we'd start by just hearing a little bit about Alex as a school kid. What were you like at school, Alex? Were you an entrepreneurial kid at school?
Yeah, I've always been sort of entrepreneurial. So I used to do some slightly dodgy dealings, like copying games and music here and there and selling those on to friends. But it was perfectly legal at the time, obviously. So I used to sort of buy and sell a lot, do eBay, those kind of things. I think I kind of naturally found it interesting to find some sort of market or someone that wanted something that I could provide for them. So yeah, it's quite an early age.
The games and the stuff that you were selling on and the items on eBay, what was the main reason behind it? You needed the money, or was it just the excitement of actually someone buying goods from yourself?
I think it was just the excitement, to be honest. I've never wanted for anything. I've never been sort of spoiled, but I've always been comfortable with my family, my family life. So I've never struggled, but I've always had good ethics put into me. So yeah, my mum and dad would always say they wouldn't ever buy me anything. They bought me stuff, but they would say you'd have to work for that. Whereas if it's an experience or kind of education, they would always contribute or pay for it. So for example, when I went traveling, my mum and dad helped me with that quite a bit. So it was those kind of experiences and education that were important to them, and they put that into me. And if I wanted to then buy a bike or a TV or an Xbox or whatever, I would have to try and do that. And me and her are very different. So my sister's very creative. She's, she can see things before they're done. She's extremely arty and fantastic with like interior design and sort of styling elements. And I've always been sort of the more kind of businessy one. I just fell into it. I found it interesting. I started reading business books early, self-development books early, from quite a very young age, really. Started building websites when I was 12, and that was for sort of family friends. But I started building up a collection of, I think that's where it sort of changed for me, really, is I started building websites and becoming interested in how to rank them. Really fell into that hole. So that's kind of how I ended up with Zest and doing digital marketing. Was I would build a website, I'd have anything. So for example, I got bought a blender for Christmas at some point, like a smoothie maker. So I got interested in making smoothies. I wrote recipes on what smoothies I was making. I'd document it, I'd take photos, and I would create website content around that. And then I would get that ranked on Google, and I'd make money for Amazon, affiliates through Google AdSense. And the whole process was really around ranking the website. And that is literally what I sort of fell in love with very early on. And then I would just rinse and repeat the process. So I would do that around, if I had a puncture on my bike, I would document that. I'd buy a domain and I would literally rank that page in the website. And they were early days where it was a lot.
And what age were you at this stage?
This was around 12 to 15, when I really had sort of a portfolio of about 30 odd websites, just doing quite good passive income. I wouldn't say it was like definitely wouldn't have provided a full-time income or even really a good part-time one now, but it was definitely for my age, it was good pocket money. It was in the hundreds, so every month, and that was really exciting. And then eventually became quite bored of it. Was a very isolated way of doing things. So I became really, I think at the age, how old was I? 16, 17. I was just kind of, other things come into your life. You want to be out with friends. You want to be mixing and mingling a little bit. I was playing a lot of sport. So they took a back seat a little bit at that time. And I would say I don't have many regrets, but probably getting rid of my portfolio is one of them. I think, what would life be like if I just rinse and repeat for years and years and years, because it was a really sort of proven system.
Yeah. I suppose you'd have been an absolute master in puncture repair industry.
Yeah, exactly. So I had websites on, honestly, smoothie, puncture repair. I had weather related things.
So you were really drilling deep into niches quite early on then, 12 to 15 essentially.
Really, really early. Sort of keyword research, the infancy of it. I mean, that's the thing that really annoys me sometimes is I was very early and I was really good at it, but I was so young. So I didn't have the foresight and the business knowledge and experience that I have now to really ever capitalize on it, which was one of the nice things is it was always a hobby for me that had, created sort of a little bit of pocket money. Yeah.
It wasn't a business enterprise yet. You were just learning your trade effectively.
Exactly. Yeah. So I do always think like, oh God, I was so early in that game, but I didn't have the capital behind me. I didn't have the idea of how I would sort of scale it. I just did it for fun because I genuinely really, really enjoyed it. I made websites for everything, games I played, anything. And then with the niche side of things and the keyword research, keyword rich domains, like when they worked like a dream, I had loads of them. And that's what I would do. I'd find a domain, find keyword that had a demand, and then I would sort of exploit that by building content around it in the very very early days, early 2000s.
So obviously from 12 to 15, and then you moved on and kind of let that side of things slide a little bit. Did you then go on to university, and what did you study at university?
So my websites carried on giving me some income. Again, it was all it was enough to live on, but it definitely wasn't sort of anything major. I think my average month was anywhere between £500 to £700 at that time, but for a young person that's pretty nice. I went traveling before I went to uni. Took a gap year, went traveling Southeast Asia and Australia, New Zealand for 6 months with a couple of friends. And then once I back from that, I was managing my websites, but by this point they were dying off. So that income was, a couple of hundred, if that, hanging on to the rankings they had, but losing others and just needed maintenance really. And then after I came back, then I went to uni the following year. I went to Chester University, studied graphic design. That was another real interest of mine, doing website design. I've never been a good coder, but I've always had an eye for design. And that's the bit I really enjoyed, is the designing the layouts of websites, trying my best to code it, doing a hatchet job, which was fine back then. Wouldn't cut it now. Sure. But that's what I sort of studied, and kind of in my graphic design degree, I stuck to that side of things as my specialist area, like typography and design, web design.
So obviously university, would you, in hindsight now, saying that was kind of instrumental in you starting a business, or would you say you would have started a business regardless of going to university?
I wouldn't say it was instrumental, and I know universities and degrees get mixed amounts of love and hate now, but for me, I wouldn't say I've ever used my degree in a formal sense. I've never needed to, because I started Zest young at 23, just out of uni, not many, a couple 2 or 3 years after I came out of uni. But what I would say is I've used design in every aspect of my life, whether it's just how things look, getting a gauge on how things are laid out so that usability comes into play and those things. And I find that it's just sort of weaved into my daily life. I always use it, and therefore I really value it. And the other side of university that I think is kind of often overlooked is it's a very good way of growing up fast. You have to take care of yourself. You're living with other friends, you're going out, you're managing your own time, you're managing your own deadlines and workloads and all the rest of it.
No more excuses that you can't blame your parents for this, or you've got to do it yourself, haven't you? So
you do. And when you're doing a course like graphic design, there is no hiding place. Like if you're kind of, let's say you're hungover or you've had a late night out with your mates and you've got to get work done, you can't just sit in your bed on a laptop typing out words. You have to bring out all the paints and the pens and the paper and the scalpels and everything, and you have to really be involved in it. So I think from that point of view, it maybe built some soft skills around being able to think for myself and manage my time effectively.
And also work ethic as well, isn't it? Like, you're on your own all of a sudden.
Yeah.
When you're at school or sixth form, you've got others effectively kind of looking over you a little bit and kind of making sure that you're doing work when you're supposed to. You suddenly go to university and they're like, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. You're paying for this. It's on you now. So it's that get up and go. Like you said, if you're hungover, you've still got to go and do the work, and you can't just sit in bed all day.
It just kind of, it sort of puts you in the right mindset without, for me, I know others put their degrees into, that is their career choice and the career paths that they have. But for me, it was sort of the secondary skills and the traits and behaviors and things that that I really benefited from. And I really value that time. And same with traveling. Traveling did that for me as well. Just, being out somewhere miles and miles and miles away from my family and with a couple of mates, having to make decisions, having to plan your own travel, having to be wary of any risk, having to book onto tours and make your own itinerary and stick to it and get to the plane on time. All of those things, I think, maybe helped me be more confident going into business. And I think, the younger side, when I was sort of the entrepreneurial side, I think I had that in a way. So I think it maybe the two collided and
made things work a little bit faster. Yeah, because there is a big argument, isn't there? Whether you just learn by doing or whether you need to learn first and then go and do it. I've got a talk actually next week at the local college, and these kids are basically deciding whether they're going to go to university or whether they're going to go straight into the business world. It's a kind of a tough line because I don't want to advise them either way because I went to university. So I can only advise them from my version of doing things. And I guess it's up to everyone what they feel is the best option for them. But for me, likewise, university created a lot of soft skills, the confidence that you're able to go into a room and speak to anyone because, you're used to doing it multiple times. I think, that all goes into business. When you got to go out there and get customers, no one's coming to you. You've got to go to them. So there's a lot of skills.
There's no right or wrong answer either. I think you can do any path will get you to the same place, but you have to do the work. I think the things that I see in people that were in their early 20s and stuff, they have so many plans, plan, but they it's execution. You have to get a plan and do it. It might work, it might not, but you're never going to know if you don't actually just crack on with stuff. And I think that's something that I've probably always been a bit better at. And I know you have, Dan, like you have many ideas, always new ideas, but they always come into fruition, and some work, some don't. But that's the way you learn, and that's the way you get things. You hit ideas that do take off.
Absolutely, yeah. If you don't do anything, you won't achieve anything. That's the thing. You've got to do it. So obviously, moving on from university, did you then go and work somewhere before starting Zest, or did you start Zest straight away?
Yeah, so I was doing some freelance projects on the side. So at uni, I was doing small design projects, a bit like kind of as you would find with Upwork or Fiverr or something like that, but before those places even exist. There was a forum called Digital Point, and I used to do work on there all the time, and just $50 for a logo here and there. And then I had family friends who would, one of my friends' sister had a salon, and she employed me to do her kind of flyers and brochures and things like that. So I had these kind of odd jobs all going on at the same time, but all kind of related. And when I came out, I said to my parents, I was like, right, I want to run a business. So I did set up as a sort of self-employed, which doesn't need a lot, but I had my company name, I had all of those kind of bits and pieces. And very quickly, I realized that I was good at the work because I've always done it. So it wasn't anything new for me. But the bit where I had huge gaps was actually understanding what a business was. I didn't know what an invoice was. So when people was like, oh, do you want to send me an invoice? I was thinking, I don't know. I don't really know what one of those is and how it works and stuff. So my dad was always helpful with that. He was involved. He was a financial director for a family business. So he managed to help me with, a few of those things, but ultimately I wasn't ready. My sales were coming from family friends and contacts and, small jobs that I would have to compete for, which is, I now know is the way you have to do it anyway. But when it's like, $100 logo or something crappy like that, those things, they dry up if you don't keep on them. And so I got to a point where I realized I needed to learn more about business. And so I went to work for an agency. I put myself out there. I went for a few agency roles, and I actually went for a job back in Chester because I really sort of fresh out of uni. I really loved it up there. I'd kind of settled in quite nicely, and it wasn't to be. And I remember getting turned down by that company and thinking, what? Like, I've been doing this for 10 years and I'm like 21, how have you not hired me? And I was so angry, but I anyway, I came
Do you want to
back.
name that company? Do you know that company?
I won't, but it's a big pub in Chester. You'll know them if you see it. So yeah, it was just it wasn't to be. I came back down south, Buckinghamshire, where I'm from, moved with my parents. That's when I started, and I started looking for sort of local agencies or within the area. Finally got a job at an agency and settled into the work side really easily. Again, it was something I was just used to, and I was really lucky because actually this company turned out to be one of our competitors later down the line, but never in a sort of, it's always been in an amicable way. I've always got massive respect for my manager, my boss at the time. He taught me what an invoice was. He took me on sales meetings. He let me draw up proposals and then kind of worked with me on the contractual part. So all of these things that I learned were learned through really shadowing my then boss. And I remember reaching a point where we went for a pitch. I did the pitch, prepared the proposal, won the pitch, did the work, and I did the full cycle of everything. And at that point, I was like, ready. Like, I know just inside me, something just clicked, and it was like, you know what you're doing now. Like, you need to think about doing this for yourself. At the time, we went in for sort of reviews and stuff, and really I had so many ideas and put forward the ideas, but my boss was like, can we come back to these in 6 months? The business at the time, the business had lost a couple of, it was a bit of change within the business, and nothing major, but enough to sort of sideline any ideas that aren't critical. And I remember being in the room with him, and I remember he knew I was going to leave, and I knew I was going to leave, and it was a moment I won't forget, because it was just kind of this mutual sort of appreciation that we both know what's coming up in the next few months. And it did. I then sort of left, but in an amicable way. So I did sort of consultancy work for my boss to make sure that he could replace me and have time to replace me, and the client side of things was okay. So
I think that's a really important way of doing it though as well, isn't it? Because you want to leave on good terms. Like when I've left companies, I've always tried to leave on as good a terms as I can, because you never know when you're going to need them again, even if it's just for a reference, or even just because some of the people there you really liked and you may want to work with them in another capacity later on in life.
Yeah, definitely. And just decency. Like you said, these things all come back around. You're all in the same location. You're all going for the same clients. You're all networking with the same people. I don't think I understood that massively back then, but I think just having respect, I was only able to make that move because of what I'd learned over the course of, I think I was there for about 18 months or so.
What was your role there, Alex? What was your job title?
I was an SEO executive when I joined, or digital marketing executive. I think I was digital marketing actually, but specialized on the SEO side. And my then manager was a guy from South Africa, and he was really helpful. He was good knowledge, and he taught me a lot, but around the management side. But he actually ended up sort of leaving himself not too long after I joined. So at the time, I came in under him, but very quickly I was sort of relied upon. Within 6 months, I was given a lot more responsibility to help manage that process. And he actually moved back to South Africa. And yes, I kind of, the whole thing was very accelerated. It's a classic sort of small business scenario where you need people that are just going to be thrown in and they're okay with that. You throw as much work as possible at someone. They take it on. There's bits they can't do. There's bits they can do. There's bits they love. There's bits they don't like. That's the mentality of a startup, and you need those people around. And I think that's where sort of my boss's respect for me came, because I'd take on anything, and that was mutual. He would never hide anything from me, and I think I took a lot of those qualities into Zest for me. With the transparency around a team.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that any manager can do is give their employees autonomy. If you're given autonomy and given the opportunity to fail, your growth curve is hugely increased. Working in small businesses, I think that is one of the things that will always trump a larger business. I've worked in both large and small businesses, and whenever you're in a large business, you'll be in finance, but you'll be in finance, you'll be within invoicing within finance, and then invoicing within a certain client, and it's very niche down. Whereas you go to a small business and it's literally like, right, you now look after all of our finance, learn how to do everything.
You'll always learn more that way. For me, I mean, I'm sure there's arguments against that, but I think with younger people, finding out what you actually enjoy is often the hardest bit. I was very lucky with just falling into the SEO side of things and my love for digital. But using my sister as an example again, it took her years to find out what she really liked. And I think that's kind of typical, and there's a lot of pressure on people to find that out. When you work in a small business, you can give things a go and you can take things on. I think, you find that, and it's nice to see when you hire people and you see where they just sort of naturally progress to. It might not always be where you need them to be. So you have to, there is an element of letting them go fly, but at the same time, you've got to be, you've also got to have your business hat on and say, I need a square peg in a square hole. So if you're a square peg morphing into a round peg, that might not be here, but it's perfectly okay, and sort of helping to nurture that into people. Otherwise you'll never get the best out of it.
Moving on to starting Zest. So you've just arranged to leave with your existing company, done a bit of freelance. Did you then start Zest and straight away get a customer, or how did it work?
Yeah, so I left my employment in March, April 2010, and I started Zest in June 2010 officially. At the time before that, I was doing consultancy work on a day rate for my employer, and one of my big clients had come across with me, which was a conversation between me and my boss. It's not the nicest thing, but that client was always mine. The relationship was with me, the results were with me, the work was with me, everything was through me. So if I'm not there,
they bought from you rather than the company, essentially.
They would have gone, and we had that conversation, and my client said at the same time, he was, I'm going to go. I'm either going with Alex or I'm going. So there was much in it, but it was all about sort of making sure everyone got the best outcome at that time. You're never going to win everything, but you weren't losing everything. So I was very lucky to have that. And then very soon afterwards, I really I got that client work in, and that gave me a lot of safety from day one.
Because that's the biggest stress bear, isn't it? That when you first start, you're like, will anyone actually want to purchase my services? And exactly. When you sit there in that chair and you've got no income, no salaries coming in, and you're going, right, it's all on me now, to have that client must have been a huge weight off your mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I always think that is, you never ever want to be worrying about money. You just don't. It's if that's consuming your mind on how am I going to pay my mortgage or the rent or the bills, you don't start a business, because it doesn't move overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. So you need to always make sure that you've got clear runway to think freely around your business, and to it's 110% into the business. If you're preoccupied with something, you won't make it. It'll just very difficult to give your all to something that needs only everything you have when you're worried about other stuff. So whether that's having enough savings in the background and giving yourself a 3-month or 6-month or 1 year runway, or having a client in place already to make sure your bills are paid, that gives you clarity of mind. And then you can, we were talking about this earlier, but you can fail. You can go networking and it doesn't work out. You can try and win a client and lose, and it's not life or death, because you've got that kind of security in place. So I think that was a massive help for me. And then alongside that, I had mentorship as well, which I've been a mentor for years now, but it's really important to me because I had so much mentorship when I was getting started. I went for coffees with, business owners who were free to, absolutely happy to give their time. I got lots of advice. I could ask questions, and, and I really got some valuable information that I've always taken, and I pass on now. Some of those learnings that I was given back then are some of my best stuff now that I would rinse and repeat, because it's so important. Whether that's
I was going to say that's fantastic, because one of the key things is asking for help. And you don't know everything when you first start, and you don't know everything after 10 years or 20 years. There's always learning to be had. To be able to just ask someone for advice or information on an area that you don't know gives you so much value, essentially.
100%. A couple of examples. One time I got absolutely screwed by this guy who I thought was a client. Built a whole website, did everything. And he went through a tough period with his business. He never acknowledged that he'd order a website. He never sent me an email. It was all done over phone. And so when I went to present a website, he was like, "What website?" Never asked for a website. And I was thinking, oh my God, like, what? This guy's like 70 years old. He shouldn't be doing that to a young business. He shouldn't be doing that anyway. But, I just felt so kind of ripped up inside that I'd just been sort of taken for a ride. And anyway, one of my mentors sat down with me and we went through it, and he was like, "Right, this is the letter you're going to send. This is the exact process you're going to go through for debt collection. It's going to look like this." And thankfully I had one voicemail in some back end of my phone somewhere that had him acknowledging that I'd delivered on a milestone, and it was enough. It didn't pay me. I got the debt collection through and I got a check, and it wasn't the full amount, but it was pretty close. And at the end of the day, I think he got CCJ or close to it, or something silly, something that could have been easily avoided. And I learned loads of lessons. I learned a few lessons because I learned, always take a deposit. There's no way I would do work without a deposit in place, because that commitment is a necessity. Making sure contracts are watertight. We've never lost a contractual battle when I was at Zest. You don't have many of them, but you do have times where it's like, oh, we pay for this and we want to guarantee results, but they didn't come, or we don't want to pay you the full amount, or anything. We don't want to pay you the notice fee. All of these things come into play, but we never ever lost any of that, because the lessons I learned on that day had those things in place. And so when we operated, it was with complete comfort and security that we were going to get paid no matter what. We're going to get paid. And one of the things my mentor always said, a client that doesn't pay you isn't a client at all. Yeah. And it was really, really true, particularly in our industry, in the agency world, where you might win a bigger client, but they don't want to pay you 120-day terms or something silly, and
they draw it out for as long as possible, and they rely on your cash flow to.
They'll make you work out of hours, and they're not a client. They're a name that you do work for, but they're not a client. A client is someone who pays you for the work that you do. Yeah. So those things is where a mentor really helped, because if I didn't have that in place, I probably would have just, cried in the corner somewhere and thought, I've just been done here, and I'd have to just start again. I probably would have experienced that later on down the line as well.
Yeah, and it probably saved you thousands and thousands of pounds for future business that you would have potentially, even bigger business that would have been, somehow, I don't know where I was going there, but basically where the business that would have come in, but you wouldn't have taken those deposits, or you wouldn't have taken the money up front. You'd have done the work for a much bigger order, and then that would have been lost. I think, Dan, you've got a similar story, haven't you, from when
I had exactly almost identical situation with my children's entertainment business when I first started out. Yeah, we had a customer that decided, well, we were being kind and said, we'll let you pay after the event. That's fine. And of course, that payment never came through. But I had to get advice, because we were literally relying on this as income to pay our bills. And luckily, we just had her name and the address, and that was enough to kind of go through that same procedure and claim that money back through debt collectors. But obviously from that point, we put a lot more better contracts together, made sure we received payment up front and things like that. So it's very, very important to get that done before.
It is. And you always want to trust that people are going to do the right thing, and that has to be first and foremost. But it definitely helps when you have those things in place. And it has saved us thousands. It has saved us in, at the end, ultimately businesses grow and businesses struggle, and you're always going to win clients that are struggling. They won't let you know, or they won't want to pay you for the work they've done, because they're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, or whatever the saying is, and stuff like that. But if you have those things in place, you just minimize your risk of those things happening, and I was always sure of myself and the clients we won that we would get paid, because of the way we were upfront about it. We'd say if someone didn't pay us, we could have the best clients who were clients of ours for 7, 8, 9 years. But if they were late on payment, they'd get a letter, they'd get a reminder, and it would say, this is a reminder. But after that, then it's like, this is the process. This is our debt collection process. Step 1, you receive this letter. Step 2, you'll receive a notice of demand. Step 3, final letter before action. Step 4, actual action. and it's down to them at that point to then answer the email. So just having those things in place, a debt collection or debt recovery process in place is really important. And then passing that down to other people in your team as you grow and you get someone to manage your finances. It's never something that I wanted to do. I was always the one selling it. So I don't want to be your best mate and then you were selling me at the same time. And that was my first or second employee ever was financial, not a doer. I got someone in, good friend of mine actually came in to help me out with the execution of the work. So that got the work away from got me away from the work side of things, focused on the business and selling, but then brought someone in to do the books and the debt collection. So I never had that conversation. I could be your best mate in a meeting like this. I'd step away and then Rachel would be on your back saying, Dan,
we need the money.
You need to set up that payment. And that cash flow, that obsessiveness towards good cash flow and healthy finances was the cornerstone of the strength of Zest for me. It was only a small business, but we had solid finances. We were never, ever, ever in debt. We were never without runway of cash. So even during COVID, we never panicked. We did, like everyone else, you was worrying like what could happen, but we always had enough to see us through. So it was never hand to mouth. And it was all because our number one priority was good financial management.
I think that's a really good learning curve for any other business owner at the moment, or even aspiring business owner, because it's all, even if it hasn't happened to them yet, it's going to happen. Yeah. And everybody has, when you've been around long enough, everyone has a story of someone that's tried to effectively not pay you, and it's going to happen. And if you don't have that process in play, you are going to be stuck. And the more that you put up front so that you make sure that doesn't happen, the less likely it will happen. So yeah, it's a really, really valuable learning curve. So obviously with Zest, with this, the beginning side of things, did you focus on everything? Were you in graphic design? Were you in SEO? Were you in web building? Or did you niche at this stage?
We were loosely SEO. So that was my skill. That was my love. But very quickly you realize that you can't SEO all websites, because especially in 2010, there were some bad websites, even like decent WordPress templates weren't a thing then, so you would work with websites and they were just terrible. So the only way I could win that client and actually do the job that I wanted to do was to redesign the website. So that was something that we very quickly, I very quickly brought in. And that really helped actually, because the web design was sort of, cash up. It was lumps of cash up front for builds, whereas the SEO side was a monthly payment. So that gave sort of continuity. And the two worked really well together. It was never the intention to go into web design, but we've sort of fell into it. And I think the two are married. It's very difficult to do one without the other. So
it's folding into your existing empire, isn't it? Because you're working on a website, so if you can then build them the website as well, you've then got two sides of what they need to provide services or business.
Exactly. And, outsourcing wasn't new to me. So even at that point, I was outsourcing the bits that I couldn't do, if it was a bit of coding or some JavaScript or something that I just wasn't really sort of comfortable with. And that really helped. But ultimately, I wouldn't say it set me back, but it was a challenge that I wasn't ready for, because I was just me at the time. It was something that kind of, we fell into it, and actually it really helped the business, but not by design, if that makes sense. Having something that was, sort of cash flow positive in lump sum quantity versus, and then also having a kind of continuity subscription-based model really helped each other actually, because it allowed me to invest. So for example, it took me 11 months to get my first full-time employee, which is very quick. But scariest moment in my life, you're thinking, oh my God, can I actually do this? And you always think, it's a salary of let's say whatever it is, can I afford that? And you're thinking the whole thing, but you soon come to realize that actually, this is what taking on employees on a probation basis is. You have a probation period to make sure you both work for each other. It's always two-way. You might be a crappy boss, but you think you're good. So that period is really for both parties. And that's the bit you need to be ready for. So you only need, say, a month or 2 months or 3 months salary. covered.
Yeah.
That's all you have to think about. So cash flow wise, can you afford it for 3 months? So therefore, when you have something like the web builds that were coming through, though those pockets of cash that were coming into the business helped me to make those decisions quicker. And I learned the importance of all those later. I didn't know it back at the time, but yeah, as first employee, you're thinking it's just the scariest moment. But once you've done it once, you know when you're ready. And I think one of the bits of advice that I got told by one of my mentors was, you'll know when you're ready, because an employee should feel like an investment into your business, never a cost. And I've always looked at everything like that. If I'm bringing someone on, is this an investment, or is it just a cost to the business? You know, what are they going to do? What are they taking on? How much time is that going to save me? What am I going to do with that time? And what can I, will I use it to grow the business? Will I just get time back into my life? And I think when it was always a gut feel thing. I always felt ready when we were ready to hire. I felt inside, I felt ready to hire, and I knew it was the right time.
I think it becomes almost gut feeling. But I think for a lot of new business owners, that one of the hardest things is making that call, because they're often doing the bookkeeping, the invoicing, they're also doing the work, they're getting out, doing networking, they're getting the customers in. And they're suddenly going, this is crazy. I can't do all of this all the time. The business isn't growing. I don't know why it's not growing. And the reality is because they need to focus on one or two things, and they need to bring the people in to give them time. And then they'll have time to grow that business, isn't it?
If you've got a pie, and this is how I ultimately exited the business. So I'm sure we'll come back to the pie analogy at some point. But, if you've got a pie of your time and it's got 50 different wedges, of bookkeeping and marketing and admin and social and all the other things you need to do, how can you possibly think that you're going to compete? How can you possibly think that you're actually going to be the best, or, very good at the thing you need to be good at, which is what your business provides? Because it's like in anything. If you're a 100-meter sprinter, all your training is towards 100-meter sprinting. You're not learning how to box. You're not learning how to bungee jump and skydive and fish and do anything else. You are just learning how to sprint. So for me, the element of knowing where you need to focus your time was really, really, really important. And I think I did that very quickly by, again, just, I don't know, I can't tell you why I did it, but somewhere along the line, something clicked with me, which was, I need to, make sure that other people are doing these roles. Otherwise,
I think for me, because I met you, Alex, in 2017, and we were going to a networking group over in Kidlington. And I think the thing that struck me most with you is how you were building everything to scale. As in, like, you were planning everything in much more detail than I was. For example, I felt like I was running around just trying to do everything at the same time, and doing a bit of sales, doing a bit of marketing, doing a bit of finance, whatever I could. Whereas you were getting down and automating things. You were getting everyone in your team to write down processes. You were looking at how we can automate this business and make it so that you were going from, I think, 7 employees to like 10 employees. How can we do that? And I think that's the thing that struck me. You just knew what to do. And I guess that came from experience of running the business over a number of years.
Yeah, I think so. And I think just understanding, again, going back to mentorship and things you learn along the way. One of the things I got told when I started my business, I got asked whether I wanted a business or a lifestyle. And I remember going, well, can I have both? Like, what, why I want the business for a lifestyle. And my mentor said, if you want a business runs without you. That's a business. A lifestyle business is equally good. It can be just as enjoyable and fruitful and everything else, but you are the center of that. And if you want to play golf and pick up your kids on a Tuesday, you build it around that. You build it around you. So you are the center. Whereas if you want a business that's going to scale and a business that is sellable, ultimately, you have to be out of the business. So I kept that all the way through with things like processes and making sure that I could remove as many hats as possible. And that's where the pie comes back into play, where every single year I would have a pie chart of how my time was spent by, literally timesheets. Like we used Harvest at Zest, but there's Toggle and there's loads now. But, I used to record my time all the time. And then at the end of each year, I would look at my pie chart and say, whoa, I'm spending 20% of my time on HR and recruitment now. I definitely do not want to be in HR and recruitment. That's like my worst nightmare. So I would see that and I would say, how I need to get rid of that. There's no way I'm spending 20% next year on that thing that I don't like. That's how I would pass on that, to either outsource it to someone who was better at it and enjoyed it, or that's the progression path for someone in my team, within like boundaries. If you're doing, client delivery work, you're not going to be doing HR as well. But, if you are doing the financial side, but you also really, you're quite happy doing this, or you're a manager here and you want to do one-to-ones, perfect. Take them off my plate.
Yeah, it was one of the most impressive things I think I've seen when I remember we sat down in the beginning of 2018 and you showed me how you'd spent your time the previous year in a graph. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is so far ahead. Like he's literally, he's got timesheets of everything he's done for the last year. And I can't even remember what I did yesterday.
So no, it was really, I recommend it.
So just going back a bit to your first employee, did the pie exist here? I'm getting hungry thinking about pies now, by the way.
No, honestly, the pie was everything, right? So the pie is 100% of your time and you are literally doing everything. You don't really think about it when you're a one-man band. You don't really think about it when you're 2-3 people, because, business is at that stage, it's fun, it's exciting. You need that. It's kind of like a pirate ship, like you'll have the best people you ever work with who are, not very good at what they do, or they're learning, or they're going to be somewhere else. The people you start with often aren't the people you'll finish with. And that's not a bad thing. Like you need those kind of mavericks who just like, I'll do everything. And then eventually you work out and it's like, oh, like actually that person's not right for the business anymore, or for them, they want to progress their career, or, maybe they're learning from me and they want to start their own business. So the pie was very much like just invisible, just a sort of mashup of everyone's work at that point. But one of the things that was a game changer within the business and just in my own journey was realizing you have to specialize. Like you have to get your org chart, you have to get it thought out properly, because at some point everyone doing everything doesn't work. It's not scalable. It's messy. When you lose someone, let's say you lose someone who does your social media, they do some client work, and they also manage your team socials. To find someone who's going to do that is really difficult. So what happens is you end up passing it to someone else, and then they're doing now a mixed job, and it's messy. You have to do it at the start, but there came a point for me where I realized you have to get people in the right seat doing the right role. And I think it's made easier now, because I think having contractual workers and outsourcing stuff is a lot more commonplace. Whereas I think, rewind 10 years ago and it's really, you needed someone in the office, or you felt like you did. At that point, that's when the pie started coming out, because I was just like, I cannot operate. I'm not enjoying my own business when I'm doing things that I don't enjoy. And that's ultimately what it came down to is, I don't want to be doing HR. I don't want to be doing the bits I don't enjoy. That's not why I got into it. I have to do them. I've done them, and I don't mind doing, rolling up the sleeves and doing them. But if you just sort of like let yourself morph into this role, that's when people fall out of love with their businesses. And I think ultimately that's where a lot of businesses fail, is because somewhere along the line, the founder or, the kind of the leadership has lost their way, and they're just miserable and not motivated to.
They've lost the love, essentially.
They've lost the love because they haven't tracked where they haven't tracked where their love is. You've got to know. And I think that really helped me, particularly towards the end, exiting the business. My pie was sort of, really 2 or 3 things. And they're all things I loved, and I had to get rid of them. They were the bits I had to then pass on. And once I'd passed on all of those things, I knew I was ready to sell. And I never built to sell. That's another question I've been asked a couple of times, is I never had an exit plan with Zest at all. I did it because I absolutely loved what I did, and I thought I could do it better than another person. One thing I would say if I started another business is I would be absolutely clear on what that exit plan was from the start.
Because that's one of the things in the business books they say, isn't it? Build to sell, essentially. Even if you're not going to sell it, you still got to think of that end in mind. And I guess that comes down to one of the challenges. Before this podcast, we asked you, and one of those was not relying on on founder-driven sales in order to exit. So how did you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, so I mean that for me is no data to back this up, but I think probably from what I've seen, the biggest challenge to most businesses, definitely within my industry, that I've seen is the founder's so integral to the actual work. And that's fine. I think it falls apart when they're trying to also be the leadership and be 6 months in front, but they also want to be rolling up their sleeves on the front line, doing the exciting client stuff. You've got to separate that. A leader should be 6 months ahead of the team they're working with. The team should be delivering the work in the present. You need to know, as a leader, you need to know what's coming up, what changes are going to affect your business, and how can you capitalize on them or mitigate risks. Founder-driven sales is something that comes right from the start. And for me, where we went wrong, and one of the challenges that I sort of found over time, was that every proposal really had to be customized to some extent with what we do, because we take on fairly complex work. It's not software development or major complex big scale stuff, but it's complex enough whereby you need someone to write that proposal, and that proposal is completely customized towards the client. The way that I changed that was focusing on how I can make it easy for someone else to sell what we do. And this is something that came from a coaching group that I was part of, but it was such a good quote, and it's simplicity scales, complexity fails. And I just love that quote because it's so true. The simpler you make something, it works for everyone. If I want to sell you guys something, the simpler I make it to understand, the more likely you're going to buy into it. If I want Dan to sell something, the easier I make it for Dan to sell that thing to someone, you'll be able to pick it up. And you don't need to be me. You don't need to be someone else with skills in another area. You just have to be able to sell what it is you're selling. That's where the turning point came for me, which was it took a long time to make these changes, because it definitely doesn't happen overnight. But one of the things I really focused on, and I really realized, was that if I didn't write the proposal, we weren't going to win that business. I could get someone else to do it in my team, but I was taking them off client work. And I can't say to them, well, why? How come you're late for this bit of work here? Because that I've just asked them to put 8 hours into something that I'm supposed to be doing. It was about looking at the things that we do, and do we even need to go into that level of detail for clients? Do they care? And ultimately, I realized that a lot of it was stuff they don't really care about. If they do care about it, why? You can question that. Why do you care? Why do you care what language it's written in? In your business, you will care about those things, but another business won't care. They don't need to care. It just needs to be what it is they're trying to do, which is book a table at a restaurant or whatever it is they might be doing. So it was about simplifying everything down to what we actually provided and going in with that and seeing if it worked. And the more we did that, the less I was involved in the pitch process, and the more we started winning stuff without my involvement. And I would get involved and we'd have to do like bits and pieces, but it just became less and less and less and less. And it's by no means that I'm a genius or I'm the one with all the ideas. It was just 70% of a proposal was written fresh every time. It's time consuming, it's not scalable. And ultimately, it's a boutique business that's founder led that you
can't exit without moving that on.
You'll never exit a business like that, because once you do.
Yeah, it got me thinking, because when we signed up with Zest for our recent build, for example, two things I think I cared about was, could you do it? And how much was it? I didn't care what system it was in, because I don't know what systems are out there. I just you're the experts. You tell me what system you're going to build it in.
Yeah, and you've got a problem, or you've got a challenge, or you've got an idea, and you want to see that put into practice. There are details around it, but ultimately you just want to know, okay, how much investment is this going to take? How long is it going to take? And what's the process look like? What involvement do you need from me? And I think a lot of businesses like that. We all love the sound of our own voice. We all love thinking that what we do is the most exciting thing on the planet. So we talk about it. If you talk to me about a website, I'll pick out everything and from an SEO point of view and all of this, but it's not necessarily interesting and it's not necessarily the right thing. And I think that's where we go wrong, is put the shoe on the other foot about your customer. What do they care about? Like they don't care about metadata or like hreflang and all of these kind of like buzzy terms. They don't care about that. So why do you have them in a proposal? Why do you have them in a pitch process? It's just not necessary. And actually it became a bit of a red flag when clients or would-be clients did ask for that stuff. Massive red flag. because it was like, this guy's going to be a nightmare to work. Like, why is he asking information about stuff that's like the real detail, like spreadsheets of keyword data that he's going to like sell, cross-reference with his own ideas. And you're just like, no, if you want to do it, you go and do it. It's fine with us. We'll go with someone else. But that person's going to be a time waster. They're not focused on their own business. And when you see a business owner that's focused on their own business, you can see it. That's a good business that you want to work with, because they're going places anyway. You're just helping them. Our job was to help them achieve what it is they're already going to achieve. We're not there to save your business. We amplify what's already there. That's marketing. If you're a great business, we'll make you better. If you're a terrible business, we're not going to save you, because we can't. It's not for us to do that. So those kind of things you learn along the way only comes with experience, really. It's understanding what a good client is. And we all read all these books, and it's like, this is the ideal client. So important. I never valued that, but it's so important to know what your ideal customer, to have rules as to what customers you won't take on, because they will come. And this is the pie thing again. If you're spending your time networking and marketing or out there driving sales, you're going to get sales. You're going to get opportunities. The problem is not every opportunity is a good one.
And you've got to pick and choose what works for you rather than just what business is coming your way, essentially.
Are they going to be a nightmare for your team? Are they going to be profitable? Are they a successful business anyway? What's the differentiation that sets them out? Sometimes we have to take on business because you have to. It's like, that's your lifeblood. Sometimes you see a project and you're like, oh, it's not very exciting, but we can do it and we'll do it. But they never last. They're never the businesses that last. And in our industry, it's longevity and retention that's important. We keep our average lifetime of a customer is 42 months, nearly 4 years for a customer in a quite high-paced, demanding. And we valued it. We really treasured that retention stat, because we don't have to make money from you up front, and we don't go out there looking will we keep you for years to come?
Yeah.
Because if we can, then we'll work together really well. We'll give you all the time and all the effort and we will do the things that sometimes you have to do, especially in our industry. It's like the website goes down and Lewis is there like working at 2 a.m. Now, we're not going to charge the customer for that 2 a.m., but we'll do it. If you've been a customer for 7 years or 3 years or 4 years, it's a pleasure to do that. That's the relationship side. If you're a micromanaging nightmare client, no, like you won't last long.
They can wait till 9 a.m.
Everyone says customer always comes first. No, they don't. Customer does not come first. It's your business. Your business comes first, and your employees and your team comes first. If someone's going to be I don't know if you have language control on the podcast, but if someone's going to be a dick to your team, you get rid of that business. And we did that with big clients that would just take us for an absolute ride, demand that we were on 7 p.m. calls, tell us give us work on a Friday morning and need it before the weekend. Your inability to plan and be efficient at anything of what you're doing is not our problem. And despite them paying us really well, the cost of losing a good person is far outweighs that. You have to be ready to sort of like cut ties and be
glad. You have to fire your customers sometimes.
Yeah, and be polite about it, but it's just business. You have to do that. There's always churn. You can't just stack customers, because eventually it just becomes messy.
It burns you out as well as the team, doesn't it? That's the thing. You had 3 challenges that you overcame. The third one, so we've talked about 2 of them. One was obviously the founder-driven sales. The other one was repeatable and scalable. The third one was actually keeping the team together, which kind of circles a little bit back to kind of the beginning days, essentially. So I found an article in the Oxford Mail, actually. It was to do with Zest Digital nominated for Breakout Space of the Year in March 2019. And there's a picture of you there with a beer, playing air guitar with about 6 or 7 other staff. So it looked fantastic. Was that part of the culture at Zest that kind of kept the team together?
Yeah, 100%. Our culture was really strong. I think just purely because everyone gets to say, everyone has always been valued. Like it's never my way or the highway. It's not so much a democracy where it's like, let's put everything to vote, but it was always built on just a high level of trust and reliability of being able to rely on those around you. Yeah, Lewis, who runs the business now, he was with me 6-7 years. I could count on him for anything, and likewise, if he ever needed me, he would count on me for anything. Still the case. I still speak to team members who left in 2014, and they'll message me and say like, "Oh, what's new?" or "Could you take a look at this? What do you think?" And I could do the same. And it was very much keeping the culture was so important, and investing in that, I think, is a really important part of business. It's gone too far. If I'm being completely transparent, we're in the agency world, right? Our success was founded on Google and Facebook and all of these guys, but they equally have made it very difficult for the average small business to impress and actually perform, because everyone wants cupcakes on a Friday and free beer and free lunches. It's very difficult to put those things in place and to keep up with them. So things become an expectation after a while. So there were things that didn't work, and along the way, we always kept things fresh enough so that these things weren't an expectation, but they were always felt like a treat, and we'd always give things a go. That's also important, is you've got to make an environment where people have fun. That's what we're here for. If you're not having fun, you're going to work every day. You might be the best person in the world, but your work's going to be rubbish. You're going to be annoying to everyone else because you're not happy. And that goes from a founder right the way down. Everyone has to be happy and comfortable and enjoying work. And I think that comes with good communication, investing a little bit. It doesn't take a lot. We'd spend £30 on a popcorn maker. It's nothing, but we can make popcorn. Like, it's just fun. So I've been in offices and going to pitch for clients. You're thinking, how does anyone work here? I'd go in one place, I'd be like, oh my God, these guys just stand their shoulder to shoulder in a hot, sweaty attic, putting together picture frames like it was borderline slave labor and horrible working conditions.
I've had a popcorn maker somewhere out there.
Somewhere, I hope so. But yeah, it was just, you go to a place like that and you're like, so grey. But
yeah,
on the other side, that was just a nice little thing we went for, because I think.
Did you win it? Because I know you were up for it, weren't you? I think.
No, we were one of the finalists, but we lost, and the company that won it had spent £2 million on a refurb.
Oh, and you didn't win.
Yeah, and it's like, well, of course they're going to win, because who can spend £2 million on a bloody?
What did they have for £2 million? What was it?
Lots of popcorn machines.
Honestly, the office looked incredible. Kitchen, and they had like ping pong and arcade machines and pods. Everything.
It was basically a pub then.
Everything that you think in your mind, they're going to win, and they should win. But it would have helped if they had a sort of categorized businesses a little bit. So yeah, we didn't win that, but it was good fun.
So obviously moving slightly to a different angle with the team, like with yourself when you were with your previous company and then you left. Obviously you had team members that were in key positions, and then they left, and then the impacts that had on the business. How did you kind of overcome that problem essentially? Yeah,
so during the entire journey, I had a few key people leave, but there were 2, 3 or 4 that were really, really, really key. And they're hard to lose when you've lost a good person, because you're just like, you have that sinking feeling and you're thinking, that pie I was talking about, I've just taken 2 wedges back. We always left on good terms. Everyone left on good terms. I've always respected, if people want to leave and need to leave, it's the best thing for them and it's the best thing for you ultimately. It will be better. But at the time, it's very difficult. The challenges are the things I learned from the challenges. The challenges turned out to be, for me, try to avoid having star players. You can have them, but you need to have lots of them. But if you have a star player, it means you're over-reliant on that one person to do things. And that ultimately probably drives them away because they're so good. And I had that a number of times in Zest where it was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'll just give it to such and such and they'll know what to do. And they do. And these are great people. They're hardworking, put their business first and all the rest of it. But what you don't see is they actually can hold others back. So I remember, I'll give you one example. My co-director, James, left to go and take over his dad's business in 2017. I'm best friends with James. He was best man at my wedding last year. I'm godfather to his children. We're very close. But at the time, it was the right move for him to go and run at that business and see if he can have his own thing. So one, having a proper things in place. So a notice period needs to be appropriate for the person that is in your team, because it doesn't happen overnight where you're going to hire a replacement. If you can, it's obviously a job that's slightly easier to do, slightly more simple, something that's easily replaceable. It could be something complex, like a bookkeeper, for example. You can replace them because it's a very clearly defined job. But typically in a small business, if you've got someone that's doing lots of things, which I spoke about earlier, they're really hard to replace. And I think the way we overcame the challenges, really, one was just you got to roll up your sleeves and do it, and it happens. That was the first time. The second time, we had proper notice periods in place to make sure that people would work it, to say, look, I appreciate you need to go, but you need to appreciate this is a business. And there's a number of other people who are reliant on this business maintaining some sort of consistency.
What sort of notice period was that you had implemented?
3 months. Any key person, 3 months. 1 month to absorb the fact for them to document their role. And that was another thing. So the notice period, key. One month to get things in motion, 2 months to actually replace. The second thing is making sure that every single person in your business maps out the processes that they do. They document their own job in a universal format that everyone understands. So what is it you do and how do you do it? And that, it doesn't have to be boring and robotic. You could just do a Loom video or something like this, where you're just saying, well, I update the company calendar every Monday and this is how I do it. I log in here, then I set this is my template. That's good. Then you never need to touch that again. So every touch point, every key touch point becomes a process, mapped out process, which means when you replace someone, they've got a handover procedure that works. And that is another thing. The third thing is the handover needs to be solid. So you always, ideally, need a third person in that handover, because if I'm handing over to Dan and I want to get out of there, I'm checked out now, because I go on holiday on Thursday and I've got 2 weeks before I start my new role and I'm really happy. So I'm going to tell Dan the quickest possible route to do my job. Dan's the new employee he's trying to impress. So he's like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, got it. Yeah, no problem. The third person makes sure that both parties really understand what they're doing, and then it acts as a bit of a backstop to anything you need. It's not watching over, it's just business. You need to make sure your business continues. You need to make sure that you're not half-arsing that handover process, because ultimately you need those things in place to get that person running off the ground. And then when your new person gets a proper handover, they're going to succeed a lot more. The worst thing you can do is drop someone into a job they don't know. That's anyone.
That's really, really good advice. Yeah, I must have never thought about it in that level of detail, the impact and obviously the fallout and the process behind getting those jobs fulfilled, essentially. It's a really good advice there.
You always, I would say you always, one of the things I've learned, we've lost people along the way, and we've had times where I've been like really down, like kind of lost 2 key people in no time at all, and I'm just like head in hands. Oh my God, like what have I done wrong, or what's gone wrong? What's created this? And it's not always something that goes wrong. It's just we're all people. We've all got our own paths, and we're all trying to do our own thing. It's very easy for a founder of a business to be blinkered and think like everyone needs to be on this business, but that's true to some extent. But it's very difficult to manage in reality, to keep everyone happy and to keep those wheels turning and to keep everyone enthusiastic and progressing and learning and growing and all those things that we all want to do. It's extremely difficult to do that when you have multiple people. So you're always going to have some level of churn. But one thing that we were very good at, and this is again going back to the cultural side in the business, was we ingrained this culture in everyone really, or at least our kind of more senior team. We ingrained, this need to process. It's boring as hell, but it saved us so many times. It doesn't need to be complex. You can overdo it. You can write template after template after template. No one's going to read it. It's like, what are the key things? You don't need to say, click this button here, click this button there, do that. You just need to say, if it's how to lock up the office at night, it's a simple process, but it means that if someone needs to stay, they can stay. How do you do it? Make sure all the lights are turned off, set the alarm. The alarm is this. Don't close the door before you set the alarm. Once you've set the alarm, leave, check that the door's locked and go. Like, it's basic common sense, but common sense
makes a huge difference if it's written down.
Yeah, and also it gives you middle ground, because if someone doesn't do that, you can say, look, it's not me having a go at you, Dan. It's the process that you wrote, or it's the process that's written. It's 5 steps. How come you didn't follow it? Well, I didn't look at the process. Why didn't you look at the process? Well, because I didn't know where to find it. Okay, fine. We can learn from that. It doesn't excuse the fact that you never did it, but the fact that you couldn't find it is also something we need to improve on. And then you just get into this habit of making sure that everything's accessible and as much as possible. We were never perfect, and we definitely, it's always the ideal outcome when you describe stuff like this. There was lots of times where process wasn't followed because it was actually unimportant. It was process for process sake, and that's just as bad. Is like if you got process after process after process.
Bringing that corporate level of organization to a smaller business, isn't it? But that can also hinder the entrepreneurial side of the business as well, potentially, if people are like, okay, how do I do it? Just show me exactly how I do it, rather than thinking outside the box. So it's a tough one, isn't it?
100%. If you say put a shelf up, I don't care whether you put the brackets on first into the wall, or whether you put the brackets into the shelf and then put that on. Like, I don't care about the order. Just get the shelf on the wall to this spec. And I think that's something that you go back to, is like, okay, what is the outcome you need? And then everyone's going to be different. Like, we have personality profiles.
Starting with the end goal in mind, isn't it?
Yeah, some people sit there and sort of plan everything and visualize it, and like they're kind of thinking, well, I'm going to do this, and step 1's out, step 2, da, 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 da. And there's other people that are just like, right, bull in a china shop, and I'll figure it out along the way. There's some people that talk about it. There's some people that write about it. There's some people that just do, and there's some people that just planned and they don't actually do. Like, they're all valuable, but you're never going to have a process that works for everyone. The more detailed you have, or the more detailed process you have, the harder it is. And some of those things actually came into play. Like when we would write proposals, we went for a stage where we'd write sort of a summary. So we'd write for personality profiles. So we'd write the top level, what is it we're going to do? Like exactly like you said. I mean, you are highly sort of that kind of D profile, Dan, where it's like, give me a task list, I'm just going to smash through it, tell me how much it's going to cost, and then get out of my office and let me crack on. And then you got other people who want to sit down and talk to you about it. How do you feel about this decision that you're making, and what would be your top priority when you do it? And that's all fine. So you have to, when you design like things like proposal or process, like if you can, I mean, if you've got the capacity to do so, that's how I would do it now. So we'd write like executive summary, kind of what is that? Then sort of the brand story piece for the kind of, the people lovers who want to know that bit. And then right at the end, and you see it on e-commerce pages as well, don't you? You go on, here's a Adidas trainer, blah, 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 blah. And then afterwards it says technical specs. And it's like sole thickness, like 2.1 inches or whatever. Like
there's only a few people that read that. Yeah.
Some people will read it. Some people will go, oh, okay, I understand that. It's like on a laptop. Some people buy a laptop, they buy a MacBook. Some people go on a MacBook and say, right, no, I need an M2 core processor. Actually, I need more RAM than that. That RAM's not going to do it for me. So there's some people that need that information, some people that don't. And I think the same with processes is keep it simple, and where you need to go into detail, that's when you can go into detail, but try to do the first way first. So simple, and then expand on that rather than just expand on everything. Otherwise, we've lost hours trying to do our detailed processes that just weren't read.
This podcast is sponsored by Shazoo.co. They put together branded swag boxes for new employees that make the onboarding experience personal. Check out Shazoo.co today.
I think we've learned a lot today, Dan. Have you learned about our relationship today? Because there's some similarities.
I am playing myself, so I can see some great advice though.
Yeah, I mean, I think the plan, if you're okay, Alex, is I was literally just going to move on the fully remote. So obviously following on from the really good team culture that you had within the office, how that's then moved on when you took the business remote just before COVID. And then it was going to move on to why you exited and how, if you've got time for that.
And that'll be night time, yeah.
Alex is like reaching around trying to get a jacket from somewhere, like he's lighting a fire there with his feet.
Yeah, no, we're good. We can do that.
Cool. Okay, Dan, are you all right? Anything you wanted to recircle back on, or?
No, only stuff that probably isn't that interesting really to other listeners, just me. So I'll leave those out.
Okay.
There's much better information, I'm sure, from Alex. So yeah, I'll let you carry on with your stuff.
You had a really good office culture. And then in early 2020, before the COVID pandemic, you actually took your business fully remote.
I should claim it as premonition, but no, it was really down to feeling that we just did not need an office to operate. And I know other businesses will be different, but at the time we were in an industrial park in Oxfordshire. It's not a London office. It's not a city centre office. It doesn't have that pull and the gravity that comes with that kind of like central hub. The work we were doing was related in terms of we work best when we're fully focused, and actually people in the office disturb each other. Phone goes off in an open plan office. Everyone's listening. Everyone wants to know who it is. Everyone's immediately tuned off their work because the phone's rang and they want to know if it's that client they were dreading. If someone makes a cup of tea, it's a cup of tea for everyone, and all of a sudden it's another chat. And I don't think these are bad things, but one thing that I realize is that time for me, that time was not effectively used. I would much rather give someone an extra hour so they can spend with their kids or go to the gym than have them talk about daily chit chat whilst you make tea or listen on the phone or just disturb other people. So it was really just a feeling that it was actually quite selfish really, because I felt like I couldn't work in an open plan office. At the time, my pie there wasn't much to it, and I really was going in the office. So I'd come back from a day and I'd be like, my wife would say, "How was your day?" And I'm like, "Oh, like it was good. I did everything I needed to before noon, but I was in all day because I felt I needed to be in." Then I was as much of a distractor as the next person. And I remember just feeling that we could open our horizons. Of the other side of this is recruitment, going back to the Oxfordshire thing. For what we do, it's very specialist. To be good, there's lots of people that are digital, but there's very few good people. And particularly in a radius of like 40 minutes, and 40 minutes is pushing it now for a commuter, a commute to work. So you've got to find someone who's really good, who's available, who lives 20 minutes near to your office and likes what you do. So that narrowed down the talent pool for me massively. And that kind of going deeper into those thoughts were actually like, well, we want the best people working. I don't care where they are, as long as they can work with us and in the time zone and everything else. And we were, at the time, our business was geared for remote work. We had all the chat was on Slack. So we had an office full of people talking online. And then you had like these breakouts, which were nice, but it just wasn't necessary. And then after a period of time, so this was October 2019, I basically just thought, we don't need an office. We really do not need an office. And then in January, we'd already put stuff in place by then. It was actually, I think it was August where I really had the first initial feelings. And then October, I said to my management team, we're going remote. And then October to January, we basically geared the business for remote work. So we got everything in place. We looked at sort of phones and computer setups, soft phones and computer setups, and what software do we need to bring in? What stuff were we going to lose? How are we going to get rid of it? Office furniture and bits and pieces like that. So we didn't tell the team until Jan of 2020, and we did it in quite a sneaky way. So we basically told everyone to come and meet us. Work from home in the morning, and then we were going to meet at a pub to have a team meeting in the afternoon. So that's what we did. And then we were sort of planting it in. So we said, "Oh, how's your day?" And they're like, "Oh, I got so much done. I was working from home. Like, it just gave me the space to actually get what I needed." And we were like, okay, almost confirmed what we thought was true anyway. There were some worries. There were people that are like, we're going to miss that office culture. But we'd already planned all the answers to those objections. We knew what was coming because we were going to go through that as well. Like, how do you maintain a culture? And we'd learn from other businesses and people that I've spoken to along the way who operate this model on a much bigger scale. How do you do it? And it was, for us, it was always having, one of the best bits of advice was from a friend of mine, actually, who runs a team in California. He's based in the UK. His thing is always have something on the horizon. So always have an event on the horizon where you're going to meet your colleagues. So for us, it was every 2 weeks minimum. You would see your colleagues, whether that was a coffee in the morning, whether it was going for a walk together, whether it was going to the pub, whether it was getting together in groups or having a group meeting, whether it was a one-to-one with your manager. It didn't matter. There was always something planned within 2 weeks. So that really helped us to settle. We obviously dropped the costs of the lease of the office, which was great. But to be honest, it wasn't about saving the cost of a lease, because a lot of people go into it from a cost saving point of view. Arguably, you could say that remote work is just as expensive in other ways. But for me, your investment is going into much more valuable and effective places. Like going for lunch with a colleague for an hour has 10 times the relationship building capability of talking whilst making a cup of tea every day, because you don't talk about anything, do you? It's very difficult. It's very tricky to have a deep relationship when it's like just small talk in an office. And so that's how it came to be. It was born out of frustration and born out of a remote work, and that side of things was not new to us. As I said, even when I was 16, 17, I was outsourcing stuff. It's not new for me. I've grown up with it and I felt completely comfortable. I think the business was comfortable in a sense that we knew we could do it, because we had processes in place. We had all the things in place that we've gone through during this chat, and those really gave us the confidence to make the jump. The hardest thing was actually what would clients think. That was the hardest one, because the clients aren't ready for it.
They were just looking at it as a cost-saving exercise.
They're just like, oh, you don't have an office, you can't be a real business. And it's like, Dan, we've been around for 10 years. Like, we're not going anywhere. You can still see our accounts online. Like, you can still go on Company's House and see that we're in business. Like, nothing's changed. These are the things that have changed. And the things that really swung it were, how do you turn those into a positive? So for us, people coming into work, into the office and sitting in the office all day. Well, for our account managers, we were like, look, go and see the client. Use their office as an office. Actually understand what they do. Get to know the people in their business. Go and hot desk from their place. Yeah, that's valuable to a client. Client's like, okay, you are immersing yourself in my environment, and that's important. So it actually became the things that became monotonous with an office actually sparked some excitement outside of the office. It's different. It's not better. And I don't think I think there's a lot of arguments as to the productivity side of things. But if you've got the right things in place, you've got the right people and you treat them well, you're going to be productive, and there's nowhere to hide. If they're not productive, you can see it. Businesses that can't see unproductive team members are bad businesses. Simple as that, because you should be able to see it. You should always have checks and markers to make sure that things are getting done. The things you say are going to get done are going to get done. And that is milestones, goals, check-ins, all of those things regularly enough so that people get into a routine. Not micromanaging. You don't need to record their bloody screens, like get all Big Brother on them. That is a terrible thing to do to any person. But you want people in your business who are going to deliver, right? So you make those checks and balances are in place so that along the way it's getting done. And any person who enjoys what they do and takes pride in what they do will like those things being in place. And that's kind of, I think that was a really strong, it forces you to get better as a business when you operate remotely. You have to have processes. You have to be efficient. There's things that don't quite work. So for example, a Zoom call like this, we can't all talk. I can talk, but to have a three-way conversation is actually quite difficult. And if you've got 6 people in the room, it's like, whoa, who's talking? And then you get someone who just like takes all the screen time and all of those things that we go through. So yeah, we put in place a different way of doing it. So for example, we did silent meetings. So a silent meeting, you get a document, you write the agenda of what it is you're going to be talking about. Everyone reads it for half the meeting and adds their comments, right? So you read about it, it says bullet point 1, I think, discussion around updating the software that we're using. Yeah. And then we'd all go in and I'll say, well, this is actually really important to my role because I'm finding that it's very slow to load, blah, 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 blah. Dan would say, it is terrible. And I know there's a couple of other ideas that are really taken off and so forth. Then the rest of the meeting is then going through those ideas so that it's not just one person bullying the chat. It's everyone gets heard, and but actually it's a lot more effective than a normal meeting, because a normal meeting in an office is no better, where you just talk about 50% of the meetings is just chit chat. It's not effective. Whereas when you've got a doc with all the points and then everyone's silent thoughts and focused thoughts, and then you have half the meeting going through those focused thoughts, it's highly effective stuff. It's a different way of doing stuff. It's a different way.
Another really great idea. I think I'm going to use that one, Dan. I love the silent meeting idea.
You know what? It's. I think it was Twitter. So Twitter actually do this with their employees. I think it was Twitter or BuzzFeed. I think it's Twitter. Pretty sure.
I suppose they used to do it with their employees. Their employees are now gone, aren't they?
Well, they obviously didn't do anything because nothing's changed. 8,000
Yeah, that's true.
8,000 people was gone, and yeah, everything seems to be still up and live. So yeah, it's if you type in silent meetings Twitter, I think you'll be able to find a kind of how-to guide, and then use it, adapt it for how it's best for you. But we found it really useful.
Definitely, and the working remote is a really interesting perspective that you've obviously talked through there, because I'm the person that likes to have those tea conversations. So I'm the main person that I'll go around and make everyone a cup of tea, and I like to disturb them and stop them working and find out things about that's going on and stuff. And that's always, I guess, been me. And I really want to see people. I want to see people in the office, and I actually struggle like working remotely. Even during the pandemic, I was the only person going into the office still. But that's just me. I think that's the difference.
It's definitely tricky. I think different people enjoy different moments. I think having the best of both worlds will always yield a good result. But I don't think that remote work is. I think it was brilliant when people needed it, and it worked for them. And now the narrative is changing, and they're saying it's the worst thing ever. And ultimately, the thing that you can never buy, you can never pay people enough for, is time in their lives, isn't it? And and the thing that was really important to me is, if you do work and you want to go to the gym at 2 PM and it's not going to screw anything else up, go to the gym. Go pick your kids up at 3. Like, these things aren't important. They're not time. They are deadline specific. Picking your child up from school, right? But they're moments you won't get back. So finishing a bit of work, it doesn't have to be at 3. Equally, it doesn't have. I don't want you to work till 9 PM, but some people do. Depending on the character you are, you should be able to do as much as you want with as much autonomy. You mentioned the word earlier. That's true autonomy. The boundaries you have in place. So we said team meetings are at this time. Yeah. Any meetings, of course, are in these hours. Like, they're the non-negotiables. But if you need to go to the doctors or get your hair cut, go. It doesn't bother me. And actually, I got to the point where I was really comfortable doing that. Again, pie. I didn't have much of my pie at this time, so I was getting a lot of free time, and I wasn't needed in the business as much. So for me, it was not a problem. The hardest thing was actually getting my team to do it and not feel guilty.
Yeah,
they would be like, "Oh God, like, can I really go and get my hair cut at 2 PM in the afternoon? Like, is that all right? What will my colleagues think?" And we from the management down, we said, "You guys have to do that. I have to do that. I have to make a point of it. Guys, just popping out. I'll be back in 2 hours." I get away with it. But then my managers started doing it as well. I'd say, like, go tell them. With Lewis, it was taking his daughter to gymnastics. It was a really special moment for him. He's like, he's not going to do that for years to come. She's not going to be 2, 3, 4 years old forever.
Mm.
So for him, it was a big thing. So he made a point of it online. He'd say, "Guys, we're going to take Lavender to gymnastics. Like, I'll be back in the evening if anyone's on. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow." No one ever questioned the work that he did. That's true trust when you're good, because nobody questions what you do.
I think the sweet spot that you also had, and you hit the nail on the head. You got the team. As in, when you've got a good team and you can trust them and they're strong in their areas, these are the sorts of things that you don't worry about. You don't worry about them. The work's getting done. The deadlines are being hit.
Always assume the best. Have the check-ins, regular check-ins and milestones. Have those in place, because then you'll find out. Because nobody wants to be chasing check-ins and milestones. Nobody wants to go to a team meeting where they don't have the answers. Nobody wants to get to a milestone where they haven't done the work. So you're either going to do it or you're not. And if you're struggling and it's fixable, that's fine. But you can't hide. Hiding's not the answer for anything. So if that's the case, then you need to get another job. We have to part ways, because that's not the kind of person you need in a business. And people forget a business has to operate. It's got responsibility to all team members. So if someone's there hiding and not doing anything, you get rid of them quick. As is the case, if you're not doing anything, you'd expect to be chopped, because it impacts everyone else. And that's not a good place to be for a business has to operate effectively. And I know it sounds kind of brutal, but I think one of the things that I've definitely learned over years is you're way too kind at the start. Like, you can be kind-hearted, but kind-hearted is sometimes making hard decisions as well. A lot of the time, if you have to part ways with someone or a client or whatever, it always turns out for the best, but it might not feel it at the time. Now, go remote, for me, amplifies all of those things that show good from not so good. And it's important not to go in and say, a couple of people in our business it didn't work for because they're not technical, and ultimately we parted ways, again, always amicably, but it just didn't work for them because they didn't get it. They didn't get how to jump on a Zoom call, and they didn't get that way of working, and that's fine.
Yeah, because I suppose that's it. It's the skill set, isn't it, to be able to work on your own technically in a room. You have to be able to have that kind of social level where I guess you've got friends around you or family that you're getting that interaction from, because that's one of the main things I think you get from an office, isn't it? It's that social interaction and seeing people every day.
One of the hardest, just really quickly, one of the hardest things that we had to, a really good piece of advice that I can share with the whole remote thing is just when we did it, we had a log of all the challenges people, like a daily check-in, and we asked people just to do morning and afternoon, just write something. Could be anything. If you're doing great, just put doing great. But some really good ideas came from that. So one of the things that we don't consider is it's okay when you've got somewhere to work. If you've got an office, you're in a very lucky position. If you've got a quiet space, you're in a very lucky position. If you're in a one-bed apartment with a young baby and your wife or husband's on paternity or maternity looking after that child, and it's all very chaotic, it's very difficult to work in that environment. So the daily check-ins were things that we could fix, like what is it that you need to help you do what you need to do. And it could be something really simple. So one thing was like an extension cable, right? So one of our team members could work, they had a space, but they didn't have an extension cable that was long enough to get there, right? That's not for them to buy. Like, we bought that, we had to get that. If you need another monitor, that's fine. So all of those things where the money that you save on an office, that's where you reinvest it. If someone's working from home and they've got a baby there or a child there and it's like really noisy and they can't focus, go to a co-working space, go to a coffee shop, and here's 20 quid a day so you can get a coffee and a couple of coffees or whatever it is. Price of a coffee is like £10 now.
It's about 15 quid a coffee now.
So you wouldn't be able to do that now, but
you've only been away 9 months, but it's gone up a lot.
Yeah, exactly. It was those things. You enable people to work, but everyone's different.
Yeah.
Some people love just being in their own space. That's fine. Some people need to be out and about, as you said. That's fine. That's where the individuality can be put in place. You don't want people. Some people will take advantage of that, and some people will underuse it. But ultimately, like, if it makes good sense, then it's very easy to accommodate for how people need to work. But you need to listen. You can't just. There's no one size fits all. And I think that's true of an office or remote. I don't think there's a way that works for everyone. So it's about listening to what people want, and you give them as much as you can. And in return, they should give you better work. They should be happier, and everything else within their role should be lifted as a result of that. That's a two-way partnership.
No, sounds really good. Really, really good advice there. Now, Dan, so obviously you've been pretty much hybrid, haven't you, for the last couple of years? How do you find coming into the office versus working at home?
It's a complex one. I've been remote for a long time, haven't I? And now I'm kind of trying to get into the office, but it's difficult because I'm like on an event, working from home, working in the office. So I'm still trying to find that balance, I think, for myself. But there's a lot of positives from being at home. There's a lot of positives from being in the office. I do a lot of creative stuff, like graphics design, stuff like that. So when I need to like get my head down and there's no distraction, like the office can get distracting. So
because I keep making you tea.
Too much
it is
tea.
deep focus. That's a really good point, Dan. Like, deep focus is massive. What you can get done in 90 minutes is huge. But if someone comes and screws up that time by tapping you on the shoulder and asking if you had fun at the weekend, it's like you've just lost all of that in one. Yeah. This goes back to the time argument. You can get everything you do in your working day done in 4 hours, 5 hours. You don't need 8 hours. And anyone that does need 8 hours is either overworked or underperforming.
Yeah.
So if you've got a full working day and you've got 3 hours-ish wasted every single day, what could you be spending those 3 hours on? You could be with your kids. You could be at home. You could be at the gym. You could make dinner. You could go for a run. You could go for a walk. You could catch up on another hobby or reading. Time is so important. I don't think it's been cracked yet, put it that way. I think we've done some really cool stuff with the remote side. And I did a lot of consultancy, like free consultancy with clients over our clients mainly, but contacts over COVID who were adapting to it for the first time. And they're like, how do you do it? What do I do? And there was always this element of not being fully trusting. And I think that comes down to not having the right checks and balances in place. That's a business. If you have enough and you have them in place, and they're not silly, it's not every day, but it's 2-3 times a week where you're just like checking in. Quick, where are we with this? What's to do? For us, we had a daily task list that was always updated, always on rotation. So if stuff got on it, sometimes stuff would just pile up, and then it'd be like, we know some person's working as hard as they possibly can. It's just piling up. So then we'd jump in and help, or you'd look to hire in that position. And another time it'd be like, look, this has been on there for 3 months. What's wrong? And sometimes it'd be like, well, it's not relevant anymore. So you don't have it. You don't have those check-ins. You're not having those conversations enough. And then ultimately, business, and this is right the way from all the way through the business. A business is to provide us product or service for a paying customer. You have to provide that. It doesn't matter what role you are. Someone's paying you money to do something. The business is all about delivering that in the best way with maximum efficiency to allow you to be profitable enough to keep doing it. If you're just disorganized, then things like remote work will amplify that. The businesses that can't get remote work to work, and they're ones like, remote work sucks, like office is everything. I can almost guarantee you your business has a lot missing, because remote work shouldn't be any different to office work. It's the same work. You just do it in a different environment. You can't say it doesn't work, and you can't say it's any better, because they're the same thing. Dan doing graphic design in an office undisturbed is no different to Dan doing graphic design in his own studio at home. Undisturbed. The outcome should be the same, but it's the environment that changes, isn't it? And they need adaptations to be able to capitalize on how it works. How is it actually working for your business? And is it positive, or is it net positive, or is it detracting from something? You couldn't take a factory remote, nothing would get done.
Or a restaurant.
It doesn't work. It's got to be individual. It's got to be individual to the business. I don't think anyone's cracked it properly yet, but I am excited for how things will be in future.
Yeah. So your pie, Alex, you pretty much got your whole pie, as in you've managed to develop the team, you built the team, you took the team remote. COVID, we haven't, gone through too much about what happened during COVID, but you've then decided to obviously sell the business. What prompted that?
There's a few things. So I said at the start that I never set out with an exit plan in mind, and that's true. COVID hit. COVID, we were very lucky through COVID in some ways, because we were remote, so we weren't prevented from doing our work. The biggest thing for us was our clients, actually. So we weren't in any immediate danger, but our clients were. So COVID was all about, we phoned every client every day throughout the whole of COVID, just to make sure, can we do anything? We did so much free work and favors and anything we could do. We did it because, one, the monthly revenue covered our expenses. We were a lean business anyway, so we weren't overloaded. We lost clients, but they went on pause because they respected what we did. So they were like, can we just stop things for free, for 2-3 months while we get ourselves sorted? No problem. So COVID, we managed really well. And actually, as much as involved at that particular time, I had to get back involved big time. It was the account managers were fantastic, because they literally phoned every client every day just to make sure. And we navigated our way out around it and out of it. After that, I went back to sort of thinking, well, I don't need to be in the office every day or at my desk at the office. And so my pie became a lot smaller, and I didn't need to spend that time. So after a while, the thing that really clicked it for me was I wasn't involved in the business at that point. I barely worked. So maybe 2 to 3 to 4 hours a week. And I could probably say, I could say half of that time was just me being on Slack, chatting and posting memes and stuff. So
making people virtual teas.
At that point, I started to feel obviously very grateful that I was in that position, that my management team were basically running the business and had been for a while. But personally, I felt like that I wasn't needed in the business, and that was actually really quite challenging for me because I've always been Alex, like the founder, always been like the go-to person or something. But after a while, you be careful what you wish for, because it was very much like I knew I had to not be that person. It wasn't even about the sale. It was about what I mentioned earlier about having a business, and a business runs without you. I've always worked that sort of that goal of how do I get this business to work without me? So once I got to that stage, then the sort of conflicting thoughts come in, because they're like, well, actually now you're not the main person. Like, in fact, no one comes to you. And I remember people getting hired and I didn't even know them. And it's like, we're not a big team. I'm like, oh my God, someone started. I'll say hello and I will have that chat, but I wasn't involved in the process. I didn't know we needed to hire. I didn't hire. I signed off the decision, but it's like, I don't know anything about it. And ultimately, I gave that decision away as well. So people could just hire. If we needed to get a contractor or even perm, you could do it. I don't need to be in the interview. So that at that point, that's when I started feeling like this is the right time for me to consider selling, because a few things. One, I felt like I wasn't needed. And if I'm not needed, I've kind of done what I've set out to do, but at the same time, I'm useless, because there's only so much sitting at home doing absolutely nothing, or, to make yourself busy you can do. And it's fine when you've worked for 12 years and worked damn hard during that time. You need time off, but it's tricky it's a battle. It's an internal battle that you have with yourself. The second thing was that I'm in a very, very, very lucky position where this business is running without me, but I can't take all the spoils, and I can't be the leader of a business when I haven't got my hands on the steering wheel. It's not fair to anyone else, and it's not fair to me to kid myself that's how it is. So that was the second thing. And the third thing was identity. And it was like, well, if I was to stay with Zest, and in 10 years time, would I feel fulfilled personally? No, that would be my answer. Because I've got Zest to where I want it to be, in terms of like, I'm not in the business. I've achieved what a lot of businesses never actually achieve time, which is completely removing me. Now, if I did that for 10 years, I don't know whether I don't think I would be fulfilled. And I think that combination of thoughts, I didn't want to only be known for Zest. I didn't want it to be my identity. I wanted to try something else and challenge myself in different ways, and have the space and freedom to be able to do that. And that was when that's when I made a decision, really. I knew that I was ready for it. And that was
basically reached a place where, even though, like you said, you didn't set out with an end goal. During the way, you'd found that end goal was removing yourself from the business, and once you realised that,
that was, I mean, same as COVID, same months. But August, I thought it. October, I really did decide at that point. I was on a retreat with my coaching group. We were in Marbella. It was like a big 4-day thing, only focused on business, only focused on yourself. And I just that was my focus. My sole intention was, can I do it? Is it possible? And I was around that made me realize that it is. And so October, I really decided. December, I had a chat with my senior team and said, this is what I want to do. These are my options. And then May 2022 completed.
I mean, it happens so fast, because usually...
So it all happens very quickly, but selling to your team, it's such a joy for me to be able to sell to my team. And I think that was my ideal outcome, was that Zest has to remain Zest. It doesn't have to. I'm not romantic in terms of, like, I wanted the exit, and the most important thing for me was to get a clean exit that's successful.
Yeah.
But the way you get that is by making sure that your team's taken care of. So I want to make sure my team are there. I want to make sure that the way we do things is you can change it as much as you want, but the core focus of what we do remains. I looked at trade sales. I looked at employee ownership trusts. I looked at so many different avenues to reach an exit. But ultimately, my team, I felt, had earned the chance to take this business on. They were running the business. So for me, how do you make that happen? And once I'd made that decision and I had buy-in and we had a plan, it was quick, because there was complete trust. They ran the business. They knew everything about the business. They knew all the numbers. A lot of business owners they hide stuff from their team. And it's just the most unhealthy way to run a business, because at some point you're either going to grow out of love with it or you're just going to do it for the rest of your life. You're not going to be able to sell it, because who's going to buy something from anyone that doesn't share it? And so we never had that problem, because here's the business. The only thing they didn't know was, like my earnings, but that's just because they didn't have access to that, like the tax, the end of year accounts and the management accounts on that level. But it wasn't an issue. It was like, here you go. And that made everything really clear. So it went from there, it went to projections really quickly of how do we make it. So the other key goal, which I mentioned a moment ago, was about how do you make it succeed? And a lot of sort of business sales and valuations and stuff are based on crazy amounts of growth. And for me, it wasn't about growth. It was about longevity, because we've been around 12 years and I want Zest to be around for another 12 years without me. In terms of the way we structured the deal, it was, yes, obviously I want to pay out, and I want that to make sure that I'm getting enough up front, and if I'm taking on more risk, then that has to equate to valuation. But at the same time, I'm not greedy, so I definitely don't want to strip the business of everything, and I want to give you the best chance of succeeding without me. That was the conversation, and it was just a really nice process. I don't think a lot of sales would be as comfortable. Now, there were hard times, like there were ups and downs, and obviously lawyers get involved, and it's difficult, because the legal process is an absolute ball ache. It takes ages, and it's just, you feel like you're on the opposing sides of the table a lot sometimes.
Yeah.
But the way we managed it, and the way we always said we'd manage it, is we'd talk first and then we'd go to solicitor second. And then the other thing was just being upfront. I was really upfront with my team. I said, this is my business, you're running it, and I want you to have it, but it's my business, it's my proposal, and these are my terms, and this is it. It's not a negotiation, because you're not buying it. It's funded by the business and through future profits.
Yeah.
So we had lots of cash in the business, which is the upfront bit, and then the rest is funded on future growth. But it doesn't need to be growth, because we were profitable anyway. So it actually comes out of zero growth. Like the deal would work on zero growth, but there are incentives for that not to happen. The quicker they're paying me out, the better it is, for everyone. So that's how we did it. And then when you're going through solicitors and then you talk first, because then you're setting out stuff in conversation. Solicitors are looking to take as much money as possible from you.
The more money they earn, isn't it?
There might be some listening to this at some point, and it's just true. Like, they're on the clock, and they will make any excuse to add a few hours on. That's my experience anyway. So,
sorry, Alex, is it possible that I could just simplify this in my brain a little bit, because a lot of it I don't really understand? I just want to see if I've got this right. So you actually sold the business to your team.
Yeah.
And you're going to get paid like over a period for selling the business to them, not like a one lump sum. That's what I'm just trying to work that.
When you sell a business anyway, whether it's trade or what, normally if it's a trade sale, you would do something called an earn out. So I'd sell to you, we'd agree a fee. So let's say it was £1 million. You'd say, right, I'm going to give you a third of that up front, and then you're going to earn the rest over the next 3 years, making sure this business works. Yeah, so you're going to stay in the business. And that's something that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to stay in the business. So the way we did is cash in the business, and we had considerable cash in the business, because that's another thing, is you got to think, another thing with business owners, which a whole nother story, but business owners rinse their businesses. I know, I've got friends that do it, and it's like, they're the ones that at some point when times are tough, it's like, maybe you shouldn't have got that Range Rover that you didn't need, because you're only like 2 years into business. Why have you got that? So anyway, so they're the ones that find it hard, because they don't have cash in the business. So I never fleeced the company. I never took out more than I needed. I knew I had it there and I could always access it, but I didn't need it. I don't want to get taxed on it. So over the years, there was a lump sum of cash that I could then draw from the company, a really tax efficient rate of 10%, and leaving the business enough to continue to operate. So working capital, etc., with a buffer. So that cash then comes to me up front, and then the rest of the money comes over a period of time.
Got it.
But that's incentivized that the quicker it is you pay me, the quicker you get your shares and ownership of the business.
Yep. Makes sense.
And that comes with all the other benefits of being able to draw dividends, and the profits then yours, not mine.
Yep.
So all of those things come into play. So that's what we're doing. But at the same time, it was very key for me to not put the business in a position where you were going to struggle. It's like, I want a simple, peaceful life, and I want Lewis and Zest, and I want them to succeed. So it was important for me to do that. So that's where the conversation comes in, and you get to a point where you're like, I believe that they can do it, and I believe I'm happy with my deal. And then Lewis is happy, and he believes he can succeed. He believes he can do better than what we've set out in expectation. He's not under pressure to do it. It's in his interest to do it, and that's when you come to an agreement. So then the rest is just paperwork. It's based on conditions. So on condition of X, you receive Y. The one thing I would say is all of these deals have protections in and things like that. So it's never risk-free. No business sale is, unless you get paid cash up front, which you'd never do. Because, I mean, sometimes you'd have to have a very simple, clean business to just be bought out for cash and leave out the door the same day. There's a lot of risk for the buyer to assume. So this is where the legals come in. It's just making sure you've got like these conditions in place. As long as you're on the same page and you're going for it, it shouldn't be a painful process. We try to make it as easy as possible because it's trust. It's all about trust. I couldn't trust Lewis more, and I don't think he could trust me anymore. And therefore, if he needs me for any part of the business, he'll phone me. We'll speak. But if he doesn't, he won't. He'll crack on. But I won't be on my email saying like, Lewis, how's things? And can we have a chat about this? Like, he just cracks on. I can see how the business is operating. As long as I'm happy with it, we're all good. And he gets complete autonomy to make it his own business, which it will be, and it already is, but he's making that his business, and I'm not standing in his way. So I hope that kind of covers
That's really interesting. And I think for many people out there who run businesses or looking to run a business, the thought process that has gone into your exit, even though I know you said you didn't plan for it, is very impressive. And I think ultimately it's a very good way of handing over, because it's a bit like a baby. You build a business from nothing, it turns into a toddler, and then it starts becoming a teenager. And then if you no longer want to be in it, you still want to make sure that it's looked after. And like you said, passing on to one of your team members is probably the most, well, not impressive, but the most kind of...
It's idyllic, isn't it? It's like you're passing it on to someone who's earned it, who knows it inside out. They've lived and breathed it just as much as I have. 6, 7, 8 years in a business is a long time. And for me to call it mine is only on paper. Yeah. It's anyone that stays that long is a part of that business. And for me to be able to pass that on to someone, to give them the same opportunities that I've had and the same fun that I've had along the way is amazing. And I know all of the things that we spoke about today, all the processes, all the culture, all the work, all the splitting your pie and getting rid of these things and automating that, and all of these things contribute to a business that can be sold. It's not a quick process. We did it quite quickly, but it's still arduous. But if you want to think about it, this was I was saying right at the very start, like if I do it again, I will have the exit plan completely in mind, because it's realistically it's going to take you a couple of years or more. We had things in place that made the process possible that were just luck. Like it was just good practice. I'd never thought, I'm going to do this because we're going to sell. We just did it like processes. So having those things in place was a benefit for us, but other businesses that maybe aren't at that stage yet, these are the things you need to be thinking about. You need to operate with a business. I knew I could sell my business because I went on holiday for a month in 2021 to Cyprus, actually, to here. 2022, sorry. Yeah, 2022. If you remember, I said December, I sat down with my team. In January, I went off for a month and they never heard from me. And when I got back, no change in the business whatsoever.
That's when you know you knew it was the right time. Yeah.
That's what I knew. I wasn't needed. I received no messages or emails, not really. Nothing that wouldn't be expected. And that things that I hadn't handed over at that particular time. But it was nothing. I mean, literally a couple of emails, that was it. And I knew at that point, we'd already discussed it, but I knew at that point it was like, I'm ready. I'm ready. They're ready. The business is ready. The business needs a leader that's there and has the same energy and can inject that same energy. If I'm away for a month and I'm not in the business, I'm not the rightful leader of that business. Can still own it. That's another.
Did you not fancy moving on to something else and just staying as an owner?
No, because with a business, one of the benefits of owning a business is that you can realize a capital event, which most people can't. So if you're working in a business and you earn your salary every year. If you sell a business, you can get 10 times your salary in one event. So it's different. So I wanted to realize that capital event to cut ties so that I'm not the identity of Zest. I understand a portfolio ownership of businesses, and I think that's a fantastic way of doing it. But for me, I think my identity was too tied to Zest. I would never really get away, even if I wanted to. I'd never really be detached. If I owned, and this is no disrespect, but if I owned a cleaning business or catering business or something like that, or a cleaning and a catering business, fantastic. They're the kind of businesses that you could run because they're very simple and they're very efficient in the way they work. They provide a service. The business model is very easy and can be run by someone, and that's different. But I think with what we do, it needs leadership, and leadership's different to ownership. It's big difference. And I just didn't want to be in a situation where I was letting the business down by being detached from the business, because I wasn't going to go back. One of the other things that I knew for me was, going through some of the questions that you ask yourself internally and whatnot. One of the things I asked myself was, if I need to go back in the business and push it, would I do it? Or could I do it? And my answer was no to both. I've had my time where I've done networking 4 days a week, worked like a dog for trying to get everything going. And I've done that. Do I want to do it again? Could I do it again? I could probably do it again, but not Zest.
Yeah.
I couldn't rewrite
that's what comes on to what's next for Alex.
I couldn't rewrite that same story twice. I have to get onto a new story. So the new story. So I haven't worked since May. I'm planning on at least doing a full year, possibly
Lovely.
to 2 years. It's important. At the end of the day, there was an element of not burnout in terms of stressful burnout, but burnout in terms of I've just only ever known digital since I was very young, since I was sort of 12, as I said, 12 years old. That's all I've ever known. So for me, it was really important that I have the time. Obviously, we've moved to Cyprus. There was so much that happened in 2022. I sold a business. I got married. We sold our house. We moved abroad. There was a lot going on. And even now, whilst we're doing sort of the immigration stuff over here, like I've had a lawyer on speed dial for over a year, like every single day for over a year. So not working's given me the time to focus on that, to focus on me, and then to figure out, get settled here, and then figure out what that next stage is. I am looking towards potentially doing investing, looking at investments. I'm looking at day trading, which I've always been an active trader anyway, but actually doing that, could I do that full time? It's something that excites me because I know it's very, very hard, and I know there's a very, very small success rate in that industry, but it's also something that I believe is a life skill that I can do from anywhere at any time with the same benefits as a business. Yeah, I mean,
is day trading is that like stock markets or something?
Yes, yeah. So
like the next Wolf of Wall Street kind of thing.
I mean,
it's might be Alex of Cyprus, more likely.
Yeah, climbing into a Lamborghini. No, and yeah, I mean, it's looking at those things, because what I really enjoy is I like looking. I like data. I like patterns, and I like business.
It sounds like you're in the right market then with that day trading.
It's something that does sort of stand out to me at the moment. I have been doing it sort of on the side, like trying to learn as much as possible. The other side is going into some sort of consultancy, because I have developed a good level of experience, I guess, just by being in it and doing it. And can I help? Could I provide that to others? But I think in truth that what I do next, I don't really know at the moment, because that would be in the same industry, which is fine, but it could be in business. But then would I need to learn the industry? So the next chapter, I don't really know, but I've given myself enough time to figure it out.
Why don't we book a date? Come on the podcast in 2 years' time, and we'll find out what happened.
Yeah, we can do that. I hope by then I'll know. But I think as much as anything, giving yourself time it's like when you start a business, you need to make sure you've got enough. You're not worried about paying the bills so you can focus on the business. And I think for me to know what I want to do next, I can't jump into anything too soon. Definitely this time off it's been great, but it's been needed because I need to detach from 12 years of running one business. There's a whole world out there of other things that I could be doing, but I've never explored them. So it's like I'm doing a lot of reading, I'm doing a lot of researching. When I say time off, I might read or look into things for 2, 3, 4 hours a day, and I'm enjoying it. I'm going down rabbit holes and just sort of see where that will lead.
Yeah.
Maybe something will take off, maybe it won't.
I mean, it's a fantastic journey you've been on, and the fact that you've learned so much and you've done so well, and you've managed to do, like you said, what the vast majority of people can't do, which is exit a business, and you've still got the rest of your life to set up new businesses and new areas and do different things. You've got a very, very good platform to go out and pretty much do whatever you want to do now. So yeah, fantastic podcast, Alex. From myself and Dan, I think that's definitely one of the most interesting conversations we've had, and the learnings I think we'll get from it is huge as well. And I'm sure those that are listening in as well will take some really good findings from what you said and your experience. If people wanted to get in touch with you, Alex, where would they go?
Nowhere. I'm invisible now. No, any normal routes. LinkedIn. I still checking on LinkedIn at the moment. So just search for Alex Minchin. You'll find me. It's probably the best way on business. And if you want to follow my barbecuing journeys, Instagram, Alex Minchin. I'm
Awesome.
cooking every day.
And so have you got a flat tire one as well?
No, not yet. Not yet. You might have given me an idea though. No, it's
actually,
those are the best ways to get in touch.
Lovely.
Very quickly, Alex, before I know Dan's trying to wrap up, but I'm just trying a new theme for our podcast, and it's just an insight to help us try and work out what makes an entrepreneur tick. So my question is, I'm making a survey. It's business owner breakfast survey, and the question is, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
For breakfast this morning, I had 2 boiled eggs, some toasted soldiers, and some cheese cubes.
Boiled eggs,
cheese cubes,
and cheese cubes.
Yeah. Get some cheese, cube it, and then use that as put it in the egg or having a spoon. Game changer.
Wow.
You're the first on the list there. So I've got boiled eggs and soldiers and cheese cubes. Sam, what did you have?
I had fruit and fibre.
Fruit and fibre.
I'm very interesting as that.
Me and my wife love. So I'm always barbecue. I'm doing lamb koftas today, which is quite cool. Which I've already done. I've already prepared them, so they'll be done later. Becky's really a really good cook, so I'm very lucky with breakfast a lot of the time. So could be anything, but mostly egg based. I love 2 eggs in the morning.
The protein, yeah. Okay, I'm going wrong because I had Cadbury's cream eggs for breakfast yesterday.
Nice. Getting that Easter diet in quickly.
Did you put
any just cheese there on the microwave? I was just like, "What's that? I'll have that."
Did you put any cheese cubes in there, Dan?
No cheese cubes. No, that would be a weird combination.
Lovely. Well, I'm definitely going to try that out tomorrow. But yeah, Alex, absolute pleasure. Really, really, really interesting journey. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about it. And
yeah, if you do a masterclass on how to develop your pie, I'd be interested in joining on that because that's really good stuff. And obviously, yeah, the complexity thing and simplifying everything. Obviously, that's something we're trying to do a lot. I mean, I often get I overthink a lot of things and make things complicated when they don't need to be. But so it's a work on, isn't it? It's great. Good advice.
It is. Yes, obviously fantastic to hear how well Cyprus is going as well, and that you're enjoying living out there, and you got the nice weather, the chilled lifestyle, and yeah, all sounds great. So we better get back to our grey skies and 9 till 8 work down.
Yeah, well done to you, Alex. Well done.
Still looks like it's sunny where you are, boys.
Oh, I mean, yeah, this is what Drayton looks like, isn't it, Dan? But no, thank you very much, Alex. I hope you enjoyed it. What we'll do is we'll finalise the episode, and if you'd like, we can send it across to you first before we post it, or we can post it and let you know when it's live. It's completely up to you.
Yeah, post it. Let me know when it's live.
It'll take a while because my pie is quite big at the moment.
Yeah. Lots of wedges. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we're
That's
doing
it,
quite
wedges,
a lot.
yeah.
We're doing quite a lot of shorts at the moment as well, because that's really good for picking up listeners essentially. And I think a lot of the snippets that you gave throughout the show, I think really good as shorts on business advice. So, and we'll probably release quite a few of those as well, just giving, hints and tips to people that, obviously in that community essentially.
Perfect.
Lovely. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Alex. Enjoy the rest of your day. We managed to finish before it got dark there, which was good.
Just about.
Still looks all right, doesn't it? Still looks all right.
It's the temperature there. I mean, it does look warm.
It's about, I think it was 23 today.
Yeah, that's lovely.
25 next week. It's hot enough. But when the sun goes down, it is chilly. So it's not.
Yeah.
When the sun goes in, it's like you have to wear a jumper because it gets cold quickly.
Outrageous.
I know. Unbelievable.
Lovely stuff.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Great to speak. And really thanks for coming on. We'll see you soon.
Cheers.
See you later. Bye.
Cheers, bye.
Well, thanks very much to Alex Minchin for being the guest today. Dan, what did you think of that conversation?
Thought it was very thought-provoking, Dan. Couldn't believe how much we went into, to be honest. We discovered everything that he's been through for the last 12 years. Just looking forward to hearing that back and hearing his story in 2 years' time when hopefully we get him back on.
Absolutely. Yeah, it leaves you wanting more, doesn't it? Lots of good stuff there.
Absolutely. So next week we've got Rob Braddock on, is that correct?
We've got Rob Braddock, the godfather of Bideford.
All the way from Devon. But We Built This Business. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.